welcome to this edition of Chanka News Network. Today I have the glorious caster Emzo with me. We're going to be doing an interview. I'm changing the format of the way I usually do interviews. I used to do it where I played with the people I was interviewing, but it became a bit too clustered and messed up where you couldn't focus on what people were saying. So I've changed it to this format.
Also, turned out I'm terrible.
Oh, me too. The entire interview I did with Zoronic, I didn't get one kill, and that was 2 hours. So yeah. I'm pretty sure people don't want to watch that. So the first question I have for you was, before you came across Siege, what was you playing mainly?
I guess I can only really get heavily into Tom Clancy games. It seems like, because before that I was pretty into Ghost Recon Phantoms for a while.
Oh, okay, yeah.
Which was the one that was like, I think it was like a Singapore development team or something like that. That was like a free to play one.
Yeah.
Which unfortunately kind of fell apart and started having problems finding matches and things like that. But that was a really cool game, very different style. It was third person, and it was kind of almost a bit less tactical, I would say.
Yeah, I remember playing that. That was a lot of fun. And in fact, when I interviewed Shishka, she was part of like the community development thing where they had like meetings with community people. So she played that as well. Yeah.
Yeah, that was a pretty big thing. I was also like I was running a website and tried to do kind of like what I did with Breaching Siege, but this was kind of like before that. Where I was running a site for this game called Prismata that's still stuck in beta, unfortunately. That's part of the reason I kind of eventually was just like, all right, I'm going to move on from this because it's been in beta forever. But it was a very different kind of game. It's almost more like a Hearthstone-y kind of game, like a CCG kind of battle game, but not really. But if you want to check out what I did before, it was prismatafrontline.com. Was something I ran for that. But that was what I was pretty into, and that kind of helped me kind of practice what I wanted to do for Breaching Siege later on. But Breaching Siege actually was something that I put together well before like I showed up on the scene, because it was like I think 2 months after the game came out that I set up that site.
What, for
which
Siege?
was an entirely different site before. Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
What was it before then?
So it was geared more towards like, here's an information resource for like here's where like how to play the different operators, here's the maps, things like that. And then eventually I realized like most people were just going to get that stuff off YouTube.
Yeah.
And so that it was kind of like, because people don't want to read. Like I'm the kind of person that will generally prefer reading over watching a video, just because like I read fast, and like trying to watch videos at 2x all the time is kind of annoying sometimes.
Yeah.
So it was just, I thought for people like me that just want to read, but like that turns out that's not most of the audience. So I decided to like pivot it more to focusing on Pro League later, since I obviously had involvement in that.
Yeah. Well, Breaching Siege was like the only website of its type for a while, if I remember correctly.
I'm not sure if it even has like anything else that's similar right now, but then I might be out of the loop on that. Unfortunately, that's kind of fallen apart a little bit in terms of I haven't updated a lot.
Yeah, there's E6, which is the only thing I could think that even comes close.
I mean, if I had the time, like if I was getting a lot of return on my investment in terms of time, I would definitely keep it up to date. And like, because I bought a full plugin that handles all the stat stuff, like so I can put in all the stats for everything, set up the tournament bracket stuff, display like full tables and things like that.
Yeah.
But it turns out all that data entry is kind of worthless if no one comes to the site.
Yeah.
And I was spending a lot of time on Breaching Siege, and just like the amount of traffic wasn't there. I mean, it's something I may consider putting a lot more effort back into in the near future as the game has grown a lot, to the point where I think people might actually come now, just because there's more and more people involved. And that's the downside, unfortunately, of running a website, is a lot of people think, like you just make money from it, but you really kind of have to have some sort of revenue source to really make that happen. And there's not a lot for me to sell. Making money from ads is difficult without like huge amounts of traffic. And so like the time spent building up that traffic is a huge investment. And I say that as someone like, I obviously, as well, like trying to build up your presence and things like that with Chanka News Network is a lot of work that is going to be definitely unpaid at first. And despite asking for donations, you don't usually get any. Yeah. It's something I would, if there's interest in it, I would like to bring it back. But I definitely love what Chanka News Network's doing so far in terms of the way you guys are covering stuff. I think it's fantastic.
Thank you. Yeah, I'm trying to get a good cover of everything, like kind of what Breaching Siege used to do, I guess, like where it has the updates and stuff, but then also Pro League. So I wanted to ask you, where did the name Emzo come from?
So like it's not really a word. It was like back when I was like probably like 14 or something, a millennia ago. I uh I was trying to figure out a new name because I don't remember what my name was before, but it was dumb and I wanted to change it. And I was sitting there and I had been drinking a bottle of Pepsi One and I like a 2 liter and I looked at it sideways for whatever reason and I saw the like because sideways the word one is looks like MZO. And so that's really where it came from. I was like, oh, that's kind of cool sounding. Like it doesn't mean anything, so I can kind of define its meaning and like be the only one with the name. And thankfully, I've pretty much been the only one with that name really for a long time until more recently. I'm seeing like some Asian like Twitters and other things that have it, or like these. There's some African guy I think that uses it. So occasionally there's a few other things, but overall, it's still like the idea was kind of like, I have this name that because it doesn't mean anything, it's not like laser blade or something where people are just going to take it. And it's also why I have the Twitter at Emzo, which is very short, and short Twitter names are kind of coveted, so that worked out nice.
Yeah. Okay, that's fair enough. Do you get random messages from the other accounts or for the other accounts sometimes?
I had some people like try and they wanted to buy the name from me. I think once.
Oh, really?
Some people that just wanted it. I don't know. People want stuff like that. So it's nice to have. The nice thing is, back before like Twitter changed stuff, tagging people kind of takes up space in a tweet.
Yeah.
Characters. So it was nice to be more taggable.
Yeah.
Because you pick up as many characters.
Yeah. Did it used to be Emzo, or do I just misremember that?
So Emzo is just for places where like they have a minimum number of characters, or I can't get Emzo. So like for example, Twitch was like that. Someone already has it. Already had Emzo on Twitch, so I had to do Emzo. And like Uplay as well, someone already had Emzo, so I'm like Emzo dot and stuff like that. So it's like unfortunately, it's not as exclusive as it used to be.
Yeah.
But it's one of those things where like people kind of knew me before as a different name in Siege. But once I started casting, that name was not necessarily appropriate, so I went back to my older name.
Okay.
For those of you out there who know what my old name was. We're back. I used to actually play with some of the pros, like in the early days, before there was really like a pro league and stuff.
Yeah.
So some of them remember that.
Was that just coincidence on being like on the same region server?
No, it was just a case of like I like to I was checking out Twitches and just watching people who are good at the game, and usually people are cool if you just ask like, hey, could I play? now there's a bigger scene, and so there's a lot more people, and so people kind of have to manage their time better. But back then there wasn't much of a scene, so I could like I got into a lot of knowing a lot of pros through Mystical. For anyone who remembers back on Team Mythic, where Necrox came from and stuff like that. And Canadian actually.
Yeah, Canadian.
Yeah, he was on there. He was on AOX when I played with him at that time. Like he was on Art of Execution, but he eventually came over to that. So yeah, so I because I talked to Mystical and he was cool and like let me play with him, and then I got on their TeamSpeak, and so I would talk with them, and it was just like everyone was very open and cool. Like the NA scene like is actually pretty chill like some of the time.
Yeah.
Especially back then when there wasn't like a lot of scene or anything to it. So it was cool to like know these people, a lot of these people going back to then.
Yeah. Yeah, I remember watching season 1 and the Team Mythic and stuff like that, and when it was first starting. It was very exciting. That was back when the pros used to stream their matches too on for like the relegations and stuff.
Yeah, funny enough, I never actually played with Kix back when he was on Mythic.
Oh, really?
I still have never actually. I don't think I've ever played Siege with Kix ever. Surprisingly, I think he's got a million other people to play it with. So.
Yeah, probably. Yeah, I remember watching them because I really liked their logo. It was like the giant octopus thing, right? That was similar to the house from Game of Thrones.
Yeah, there was a lot of people that came out of that scene because there was Mythic and Kraken were both like two different teams under it too. So that was back when teams used to have B teams. Yeah. To kind of like scrim with each other and stuff like that, because the Empire did that too, where they had red and black and stuff like that. Mm-hmm. And so like that was where a few people came out of that scene. Some people disappeared, but like there was kind of that smaller scene around then. And yeah, the Mythic had the cool like logo, so did the Kraken one.
Yeah.
Mythic was the original like really big team, and then Lit with Lost in Translation, which is the team that became what is now Rogue, essentially.
Oh, okay.
Kind of took over the scene. So that was back when it was like K9 and Snake, and Justin, who actually has just recently come back to the game. I just played with him the other day as OG Justin. So he was on that, and so the Lit eventually turned into Orbit and all the other names. And Kix went from Mythic to Lit, and stuff like that. So like it was again all this small little scene back then of these few teams that were kind of the dominant teams. That helped kind of establish the NA scene and are still around. I mean, you look at Rogue is still some of the people from the old teams. I mean, King George comes from VWS, which people may remember from the early season 1 days, which eventually turned into Flipside.
It was
so
Mint,
like
Mint was on that one as well. VWS,
he's going all the way back to VWS. For people who remember Clever. So there's all these roots, and I bring that because there's all these roots. The NA scene, while there's the NA shuffle, a lot of the people are the same people from back then. Like that's why I have played with like half the people that are in the pro scene, because it was this small like community back then of players. I mean, luckily Challenger League has helped bring in a lot of fresh blood and stuff like that. And then there's a few people who've rotated into pro teams outside of that system, but overall, like the core is, I mean, between Evil Geniuses and Rogue is a lot of the same core people.
Siege seems to have like a magnet effect where people will leave, and then in a couple of seasons they'll come back and be like, I want to get back into it. And
it's hard to leave this game. I remember when Overwatch first came out, a lot of people left to go play Overwatch, and then almost all of them came back because they were like, Overwatch does not have the depth of this game. I find that it's like a lot of times, and I've said this to other people too, that they usually agree that it scratches a certain itch that just other games don't. I mean, some people can get pretty into something like PUBG, but it's still not quite the same. Like, and you still keep coming back to Siege, especially as they keep adding stuff and changing stuff. And it's like, because it's a live game, it keeps pulling you back. You see, like I see my friends list of online people just grow exponentially before or as soon as there's like a big DLC release, or as soon as there's a big mid-season reinforcement. Like whenever there's a big update release, people come back.
Yeah, there's definitely something about it that's addictive. I don't know what it is, but there's something that's like, doesn't matter how tilted I get playing, and like how many times I die or whatever, and it's still the next day it's like, I want to play Siege. There's something about it.
I do kind of wish I had like a deathmatch mode or something for when you're just feeling like extra tilted and don't want to play super serious. Like I feel like that could just be like a blow off steam mode or a warm up mode.
Well, maybe that's what this new Outbreak things will be. It'll be more of a blow off mode, hopefully.
Hopefully
hopefully it's not utter trash. How did you find Siege then? So was it just through people switching from Phantoms, or
so like so the year it came out, because it came out in December, like much earlier in the year, I think it was during the summer or earlier, there was, I don't know if it was the like an E3 thing or something for Xbox, but I remember watching on the Xbox itself, like just, about different games and stuff like that. And they had that demo of Siege where people were running around the house, like on the old house map back when it was like a totally different looking game. And I was like, oh, that's kind of cool. Like, I don't know about that though. Like, I mean, that might be interesting down the line. So I was aware of it from there. And then I was talking to my brother, who I play a lot of Airsoft with, that I'd like something that's team-oriented to play with him and some other friends. That's more of like a team-oriented, like sort of sportsy kind of feel, but not really, because I'm not much of a physical sports person. But I kind of wanted to do something slightly esports-ish with them. And he's like, well, why not, why not check out Siege? I was like, yeah, maybe. So I signed up for the beta. And once I got into the beta, I was just like, holy crap, this is already like sucking up all of my time. And then I got into like a focus group after that as well, which is really cool. Like, cause I don't know, they seem to take the feedback pretty well. I mean, it was funny because like the focus group was like homework. Like they straight up like gave you assignments. You had to like fill out all these things. It was pretty in depth. Like they take their focus groups pretty seriously. And so that, obviously engaged me even more because they seem to be pretty interested in like what people think and like actually listening. And I know some people like to argue that they don't, but I really do think they do. And so that just got me even more into it. And then they did I think it was like in August or something. They had that demo of the Pro League that they did. Where they were showing off the early spectator cam. I was like, wow, that's really cool. Like I really like where they're going with that. And then eventually, like, when the game came out in December, I was just like super into it. And I don't know, I couldn't stop. I kept coming back to it even when I meant to do other stuff. So, and then set up Breaching Siege and kind of stuff rolled from there. But that was kind of like my entry into Siege.
Okay, that's fair enough. I remember definitely having the same feeling in December, whereas like, yeah, that nothing else is going to get played now.
Yeah, it really. I mean, I'm a game designer, and as a lot of game designers do, I get bored of games once you see their mechanics generally.
Yeah.
So like you'll play like the first like hour of a game or something, and then just toss it. Like I rarely ever actually play through a whole game. I don't play a lot of single player for that reason because it's mostly just stacks of content. Whereas this, like, if a game could actually hook me for longer than like a week, like there's something there.
Yeah.
And this game, like, obviously I've been playing it for since that first December, and that's super rare for me. Like the fact that I just can't stop coming back to this. There's something special there. And as a game designer, like I spent a lot of time like writing these essays that I never like put anywhere, like just about the game design, because like really digging into it, I felt like there was a lot of really smart things that were done, whether they were done purposely or not, that really built this foundation. I think a lot of people underestimate like the design decisions in this game that really supported it getting to where it is now, that helped it get there. That were like I say to a lot of people, like the game is one of the few games that I feel like came out fairly balanced, like when it first released. Like outside of a few exploitive things that people found in Pro League, you know, like with shields and stuff like that, like it was overall a pretty well balanced game, and that's very difficult for a game to do, I think, on launch.
Yeah, I mean, even now, like you look at the game and you're like, okay, who's actually properly, completely useless? There's like, or too strong. It's not that many. It's like one or two. Like I'd say, Ela is extremely OP, and Chanka is useless apart from being our Lord and Savior.
Combine those two somehow.
Yeah, but other than that, like it's not. Everything is fairly balanced. Like you could do some little adjustments, but it's pretty good. It's in a pretty good place, which is rare with a lot of games.
It took him a few tries to get Blackbeard to that point, though.
Oh yeah, it did. Yeah,
but it's nice because it worked out. Like he kind of evolved into a balanced place. Like not by just nerfing numbers, but by actually tweaking the way he works and stuff. So I think he's actually more interesting to watch now. And I think a lot of people don't like game mechanics that undermine the other game mechanics, but I think as a game designer, I think that's a really smart thing to do, to purposely undermine some of your game mechanics so that people don't just get complacent. And I think that, you know, a lot of pros complain about, oh no, you know, this game's about headshots. Why would you put in an operator that blocks headshots? And like, that's exactly the reason you put in an operator that blocks headshots, because otherwise you get complacent, completely relying on headshots as a crutch. And you want to keep the game dynamic. So in order to do so, if people get complacent on any of the mechanics, you need to undermine those to kind of like make people question it. Like one of the things I noticed about the game, the design of this game, was that it took this idea of like, so camping is a bad thing normally in games, right?
Yeah.
Like camping is something you don't want to happen. But it took the idea of camping and made that actually the primary game idea, is that you're camping. You're camping inside this building. That's what a siege is camping. And they took that idea, but then they took that idea and made it so that you could set up all the stuff that you want, but you were never truly safe because they would introduce operators. So you could reinforce a wall, but they would introduce an operator that could open that reinforced wall.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like all these picks and counter picks in terms of, there would be mechanics for the defenders, but then there would be mechanics for the attackers that would undermine those. Same and vice versa. And I think a lot of people don't realize that is an important part of how this game evolves, is you need to have those things that counter those other things to keep it so that things are always like somewhat uncertain. Because the more certainty you have in a game, like the more boring it gets. So if you're sure that a headshot's always going to work, that actually kind of makes it a little more boring.
Yeah, I get what you're saying. I think the game does that well. Like, if you look at what it used to be when they first announced it, it was just like 3 classes, I think, 3 or 4 classes and that was it. Like there was a shield, there was a sniper, I think there was an assault guy. I don't think there was anything else. And I quite like that someone had the bright idea of introducing the characters that could each had their own unique abilities, because it just worked. I think that is part of the thing that's addicting about it. It just works so well together, and it really pushes you to do the teamwork. Where like Battlefield, for example, will say, "Oh, it's a team-based game. We're going to give you points for doing team objectives," but it's still not a team game because it's just one guy does whatever he wants and he just doesn't get the extra points, but he got 1 million kills anyway, so it doesn't matter. But this game, like, it forces you to play as a team, and I think this just something about that makes it super super fun and intense. Um, as a game designer, do you think that where Siege came out, like as in the time frame of the end of 2015, do you think that had anything to do with its success?
I think it was nicely timed in the sense that there wasn't a lot of good competition to it coming out at the time. So, for example, you see games coming out where they come out too close to, say, Battlefront 2 or the next Call of Duty.
Yeah.
Things like that, where these games can kind of undermine each other in terms of like coming out around the same time, and everyone goes over to that game because it's the hot thing at the moment.
Mm-hmm.
I think this game kind of came out in a sleeper time. Like, it came out at a time where it could kind of grow organically because, yeah, sure, it came out in December, like, that's the Christmas time anyways. And it didn't really take off right away. Like, you can, if you ever want to see exactly kind of how it grow, you can go look at Steam charts, and you can kind of see the ups and downs over time and how it's correlated to Pro League finals and things like that. But it definitely had a slow growth, but it also didn't have a lot of things that were competing with it at the time.
Yeah.
So I think it did have fairly good timing. I mean, it was difficult because occasionally other things did pull people away. Like I said, Overwatch did. A lot of people went to Division for a minute when that came out. Like, there were things along the way, little speed bumps.
Yeah.
But I think the fact that people came back to this game actually just strengthened the resolve, because once you saw that you couldn't get away from it, like, I think people were able to commit even more to it. But the timing was a little bit like of a slow burn, and maybe they introduced Pro League way too fast. But at the same time, like, they got a lot of the bumps out of the way early on.
Yeah.
So like look how big it is already on year 3 yet, and it's already crazy doing good. I mean, it was like when I looked at Steam charts, it was number 3 in the most active players when I was looking, I think, last night.
Yeah.
Just off of
really
off the back of the finals. And that's not even, I don't even know if that's really showing the TTS play.
Yeah.
I saw that as, I think, a separate thing. So
yeah, that is separate. Yeah. And
it's definitely grown a lot.
At the finals, it was 4th on Twitch, and
yeah.
And that's just Twitch. That's not even including anything else.
And I think when it comes to like trying to be an alternative to Counter-Strike, it's hard to beat Siege for that. Like, it really does feel like a huge evolution on Counter-Strike in terms of like some of the same basic ideas, defusing a bomb. You've got 2 different sides, attack and defend. And like, there's a lot of similar ideas, but then like there's really stuff built on top of that.
Yeah.
In terms of this. I mean, obviously it doesn't have the money economy stuff, which is probably the biggest difference. But outside of that, it's like a big evolution on the game that hasn't changed dramatically for like 2 decades.
Yeah. Yeah, that's true.
So outside of PUBG, there's not a lot of competitors.
Do you think PUBG is a competitor?
I think in terms of people's time. I think some of the people that like Siege also like PUBG. Yeah. I wouldn't say it's necessarily like a direct competitor, but it's just a competitor along some of the same people like the game. I mean, you could also say Wildlands Ghost War could be a little bit of a competitor too if that takes off, because it does scratch some of the same itch as well.
Yeah.
But that's relatively new. And like, hey, I think if 2 Tom Clancy games are competing with each other, it's not a big deal.
No.
For Ubisoft, at least.
That's true. To be honest, I don't see the Wildlands War getting much thing, because I think for that game, that ship has already sailed, and I think most people are like, they saw the co-op and they've like kind of said no to it already, and like, if they wanted War to take off, they'd have to put a lot of advertising behind it.
Yeah, I'd almost like to see them just make that standalone.
I would absolutely buy that. Ghost to Wildlands War is a lot of fun.
Yeah, I think that's something that could grow. I don't think it will necessarily grow to the same level as Siege.
Yeah.
At least not anytime soon. But I do think it's a great other thing to play. Like, I actually played it with a lot of other Pro League people during the free weekend, and had a lot of fun with that. So
yeah,
it's just, that's the only other thing I see that kind of is similar in terms of that kind of team squad based feel, because Counter-Strike doesn't have the diversification of roles that you have in this game.
Yeah.
I don't just mean like entry fragger, support, that sort of like generic role. I mean, like, in terms of like the actual operators themselves and what you do with them, and the way the maps like actually influence the strategy is very different than something like Counter-Strike, where it's pretty much smokes ops and then whatever else people randomly do.
Yeah.
And I don't mean this is like a knock on Counter-Strike. It's like a 20-plus-year-old game. Like, I just mean in terms of like, where we evolve from there in terms of depth and where things can go in terms of if you're leaving Counter-Strike, where do you go from there to do something more complex and with more depth? And I think this is where you end up.
Okay, that's interesting. I'll be glad to see of people switching from CS:GO to Siege, even if it's just orgs. I mean, we've got Evil Geniuses already. I'm pretty sure they've got a CS:GO team.
Yeah, I think they. I mean, I imagine so. When Evil Geniuses got knocked out day one this last weekend, I imagine a lot of people or a lot of Evil Geniuses was just like, okay, well, come watch the IEM games then.
Yeah, the
I
PUBG
think
one.
they had some going on
Yeah.
for their yeah. Just come watch this for now then, since our team lost in Siege. I feel bad for the orgs because it was a situation where the orgs, they invested in Rogue, they invested in Evil Geniuses. I mean, those are the orgs themselves, but you know what I mean.
Yeah.
And Rogue didn't make it to land at all, and Evil Geniuses got knocked out day one. So it's like, not so. I mean, I know we were really pushing to get big orgs in this, but we need some of them to win these land finals to really like motivate them to invest money in that. I know there's a lot of talk of like ninjas in pajamas because of speculation on Twitter, and pretty much everyone agrees that they would probably be picking up SNOs if they were to pick up a team, but who knows? You know what I mean? Like, there's so much possibility. But I think if Ninjas in Pajamas jumps in as well, like, that kind of opens the floodgates, like, really, for other teams or other orgs to want to be involved.
Hopefully.
Especially with more regions now.
Yeah, I mean, I was talking to this in the R6 Pro League subreddit Discord, where it's like, I don't understand how Cloud9 can be in Rocket League and Ninjas in Pajamas can be in Paladins, but neither of them are in Siege. It's like...
Yeah.
Rocket League and Siege are on about the same level of how big they are in terms of esports, but then Paladins is just like this complete mystical thing out in the wild that no one's like ever heard of.
I kind of liked it better than Overwatch, I'll be honest. But that's just
really? I've not played it, to be honest, but it's like in terms of esports, I'd say like how are you paying attention to this? And I remember a few months ago now, and I can't remember which team it is, which annoys me. It may have been Team Liquid, but I don't think it was. Where it was one of the Dota teams or the Dota orgs were like, "Oh yeah, we're looking at Siege, we're watching it, we're seeing what's happening with it." But then I just don't understand from a business point. Surely it's worth it. I mean, the Invitational pot is a decent pot for the size of the game.
Well, I'm expecting there's a good chance we'll see one of the teams that's going to the Invitational that doesn't have an org get picked up by then, because like that's the opportunity to do it.
Yeah.
Because like there's so many eyes. Like we already broke records with the viewing of this last one. Invitational is going to be like at least 1.5 times, if not double the numbers, just because like the Invitational is huge.
That would be awesome.
So like if you're an org, that's the time to jump in, right? Because you jump in with a team that you know is already at Invitational, as opposed to one that's just during the playoffs and hoping they get to a LAN event.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm hoping we see... I mean, SNOs haven't made it into the Invitationals, but I'm fairly sure they're going to. I'm pretty sure we're going to see them with a proper team, and I'm pretty sure we're going to see... If Most Wanted make it, I'm not too sure whether they will or not. I think they have a good chance. But if they do, I see them getting a bigger org as well.
Yeah, it's hard to say because like they're gonna be using that ladder format for stuff for qualifiers, and that's gonna be a bit weird. Like I know BP's already expressed some concern about that in terms of SNOs being able to get enough plays in to be able to be the top of the ladder, and that he's a little worried that lower teams might not be able to make it, or I might be able to make it too easily because they can play more often.
Yeah.
So I know there's some concerns. We'll see how it pans out because this is the first time they're doing this, and I know like ladder is a bigger thing in the EU, and so lately it seems like they've been trying to push it for NA because there was that ladder rush event recently as well. And so it seems like they want to push the ladder, which I think is a great idea in the sense that I think having essentially a ranked system for teams as opposed to individual players is something this game needs. So I think the ladder system, while flawed in some aspects, I think is a great idea to push. Yeah. Because NA just hasn't accepted it normally.
Personally, I think it's a good idea to push, but maybe not for qualifiers for Pro League.
Yeah,
but
for
like
such
a separate,
a big event.
Yeah, maybe something separate, but I'm not sure what. Like
either way, though, so Ubisoft reserves their wild cards. Yeah, essentially, way to be able to fix some teams not getting in a way. Like, I mean, that's not like what they've said. I'm just saying, like, that is how it works out. Is that if there's a team that they want to come that doesn't make it through the regular system, they can make them come via the wildcard invites.
Yeah, I would imagine that would be reserved for a French team, though. Well,
there's 4 of them, so
yeah. Oh, and there's 2 qualifier spots in there for EU.
And I don't think I don't know if they said if the 4 wildcards have to be 1 per region. It might just be if they wanted to. I think they could use all 4 for NA or EU or whatever they wanted to do.
Yeah, I'm not sure.
because it's their cards.
Yeah, maybe. Yeah, I mean, that would make sense for sure.
So I expect, we'll see probably the teams we expect to see there because of that, plus the community vote, plus the fact that ENCE has won their spot twice, I think, and
Yes.
Penta has won their spot twice. So like you get these extra teams coming in,
Yeah.
because of that. So I think it'll work out good. I think there's always a chance we'll get one team in there that we're just like, what is this team doing here?
Yeah.
But that's kind of to be expected at some point.
Yeah, that would be good. I mean, UB are going to know if there's big orgs coming as well, so they're probably going to be holding a spot for them if they don't make it through qualifiers.
Yeah.
The next question is from Siege TV, and he asked, were you planning on becoming an esports caster before Siege existed?
First off, shout out to Siege TV. What's up, man? No, not at all. I laugh because like I really stumbled into this job, but I love it. Like it's such a fantastic job, and like I had never obviously as I was telling the story earlier, I was pretty obsessed with Siege, and like I was trying to figure out what I can do with all that energy, and like so breaching Siege was one attempt at that because it's just like I got all this like pent up like energy towards Siege that's like I think about it all the time, and like I was like just going over stuff in my head, like wanting to just like delve into it more and like watch tons of it, things like that. And so for me, like I hadn't considered the idea that one outlet for that could be actually being a commentator. I'd been exploring esports a bit more as a game designer, just because like for me, like I'm not a competitive person at all. Like I'm the least competitive person you'll ever play against. Like I don't care. I'd rather troll half the time than win. I'm just one of those horrible people. But because of that, like I hadn't been super into the competitive scene. So I spent a while delving into esports and what makes it interesting and stuff like that. And so I was like familiar with a lot of that stuff, and I had totally been following the pro league scene, Pinky and Punji, and just watching all that. Like I said, going back to the August debut of the Spectator Cam at that one event they did, all that stuff. I've been following it, but I never even thought, hey, I could be Panky or Punji. Like that was totally like, a moonshot. Or like, no, that's not something I even considered. And the way it happened was such a weird, like, I've gotten into a lot of good things in my life by just volunteering myself, by just having the effort to put myself out there and say like, hey, I'll do that.
Yeah.
And this was another case of that happening where I was just, and I've told the story a few times, but I think it's just the idea like, hey, if you can do it, like there are many ways to end up in this spot. In this case, it was me and Bloodbath. And the way it worked out was just that I'd been following his tournament. His Bathwater tournament. His co-caster happened to not be able to make it one day on short notice, and I was in his Discord and was like, just as a joke, kind of. I'm not like a joke as in like I was trolling, but in a joke as in like I wasn't taking myself very seriously. I volunteered to do it, and Blood was like, okay. So I appreciate Blood giving me that chance. It's definitely super cool of him to like really like let me come do that.
Yeah.
And so I did, and like everyone really liked it, and I was like, okay, I didn't expect that. I expected people to be. Knowing the internet, I expected everyone to be crapping all over me.
Not my
and
caster.
being like, shut up, get off the mic.
Yeah,
not my caster, yeah. Stuff like that. Like, I really expected negative feedback. And so I got so much positive feedback. I was like, wow, I'd like to try this again. And Blood was like, yeah, come back next week, next time. I was like, okay, cool. So I did 2 of them. And then Blood tells me there's this open call for casters for the second stream. Because back then they needed a second stream. Because that was back when the league format last year where they had a B-side stream where that was like they needed like community casters kind of. And so I was like, cool, it'd be fun to do from home. It's not paid or anything, but like, it'd be fun to just, cast that for the heck of it. Cause like, I just like this game and I think about it enough to have a lot to say about it. And so me and him both applied for that. And then, a week goes by and we do like a third Bloodbath or Bathwater tournament together. And then we both hear back like, hey, would you come to Poland? And we're like, shit, I was not even prepared to respond to something like that. And after mulling it over for a day or two with my fiance, we decided, all right, let's give this a try. Like, because obviously I'm obsessed with this game and it'd be good to do something more professionally with that.
Yeah.
And so we moved over to Poland in like 4 or 5 days, like packed up our entire apartment storage, moved to Poland. It was just an insane like journey over there. And then once I was over there, I really liked it still. Like, it was awesome. I loved the schedule. I loved the people I was working with. I still do. I loved just everything about it was awesome. And then going to the finals events and it's just like, yeah, this is amazing. I never thought about doing this, but once I got into it, it's like I almost can't think about doing anything else.
Yeah.
I did have podcasting background, and I teach classes and do presentations and stuff. So I had some speaking background in that sense, but never in terms of like commentating or anything like that. Obviously, I'm the analyst, so I can come in with less of like play-by-play experience.
Mm-hmm.
But at the same time, now I've done like a year's worth of play-by-play as well by doing all the solo casting from Challenger League and the Major League and things like that. So I don't know. I mean, like, it's definitely one of those things where like I don't think I was super great at it at first, but because I liked it and because like I happened to stumble into it, I think something I'd like to continue to improve on.
Yeah.
So to answer the short answer to your question is no, I did not expect to do this whatsoever or prepare for this, but I'm very, very happy to be here.
So because you wasn't expecting it, where did you get the analysis from? Was it just talking to the pros that were playing, or did you do a bunch of research, like watching them on Twitch or something?
It was a combination of like I thought about the game a lot because like from a game design standpoint, I like to analyze the strategies and like the fundamentals of the game. Mm-hmm. I spent a lot of time thinking about the fundamentals and how they work and how they build on top of each other from a game design perspective. But that also, I think, lends itself to an analysis perspective because I'm not totally focused on the meta or like very specific angles or strats as much as I am on building off those fundamentals.
Right.
Because I think no matter how the meta changes, those still will be there.
Yeah.
But then the supplementing that with, I spent a lot of time hanging out with the pros occasionally, or the people that eventually became pros, or some of them that weren't, just other people, because like they're all friendly and cool, and I like to hang out with them. So I got stuff from there, and then also watching a lot, like you said, the people back then used to stream a lot of their own stuff. But I spent a lot of time watching streams back when teams used to actually allow their comms on stream. I would learn a lot from that, like watching the Go Forest, for example, where a lot of people will stream with their comms on.
Yeah.
I learned a lot from like Lit and Orbit in the early days of watching them with like Snake or K9's comms on, because you could hear like what they were thinking, like the thought process.
That was actually
one important.
Oh, sorry to interrupt.
No, go ahead.
That was one of the things that like solidified my interest in Pro League, was listening to them play whilst watching, like listening to their communication as they were playing. Like that really, I think was it Matt that tweeted out about whether they should have the comms on the finals?
Yeah, it might have been.
And like I would be massively in favour of that. I think they raised some good points that it needs to be like post match, and then you watch a play-by just to make sure like nothing crazy gets said. But that was one of the great things that I remember watching back in season 1. It was like how everything came together.
Yeah, I think hearing that. I mean, the hard part now is people don't want to give away too much information.
Yeah.
So that's why like a lot of people don't stream with the comms on now and stuff like that. It's unfortunate that like because this game involves a lot of strategy and not just execution,
mm-hmm.
there has to be a little more secrecy than some other games.
Yeah.
And that makes I understand like they're competing for money. Like there's a lot at stake here, not to mention the orgs and things like that. So. Mm-hmm. It's unfortunate that there is some of that, but there are still some people that will do stuff, and I think it would be really cool because at finals you're already giving away a lot of stuff anyways.
Yeah.
And especially if there's not going to be, if there's going to be a big gap before the next season, or like, there's a gap where like that doesn't necessarily give away too much. I think that would be, fantastic. But at the same time, yeah, it could be pretty cancer too.
Mm-hmm.
I know we've done that with the show matches, like where, for example, I still feel really bad about this one. The first time that the Japanese guys came out for the Red Crow reveal.
Yeah.
And there was the show match where they had the comms of the community people, the influencers.
Yeah.
they were pretty toxic.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, I feel really bad because the Japanese team, their comms obviously were in Japanese, so their comms weren't used.
Yeah.
And so we kind of brought them out and kind of crapped on them a little bit. So I really feel bad for them for that, but I'm glad they were able to actually come back from that. And now Japan is, part of 3 lands in a row.
Mm-hmm.
So that's fantastic. But that was an example of where comms can be a little toxic to broadcast. Like, even though they were aware and were trying to be whatever, some of their personality comes out in the comms.
Yeah. Did you have anyone that influenced your casting? Like, did you go away and look at any other esports?
I mean, a lot of it came from watching Panky and Punji in season 1, because like I'd never tried commentating, so like I didn't necessarily know like how you're supposed to do it.
Yeah.
So I watched, a lot of their stuff. Like I'd already watched it normally anyways, in terms of like just watching it all the time. So like subconsciously, I kind of picked up a lot of what they were doing. And then I went back and watched a lot of it. And then I started trying to look at like some Counter-Strike stuff. Some people recommended some of their casters, like Anders and Similar, I think was their names. And actually watching regular sports broadcasts as well. Like, so for example, I was trying to figure out like, when you make eye contact with the camera versus the other person and stuff like that. So I started looking to sports broadcasts for that, because they have a longer tradition of casting than esports do. And obviously esports kind of has some of its own style, but I think there's a lot you could take from regular sports as well. So I started researching like who are the best casters and like trying to get an idea why. And I'm far, far from perfect, but I think I've been able to make some improvements based off of what I've seen from other casters. But it's been over time. Like when I first got to Poland and did that first Xbox match, I was garbage. Like, I'm not going to lie, it was terrible. Like the first couple of times where I was just not very good, I was not as comfortable as I would like to be.
Yeah.
But now I just really look forward to casting. Like it's comfortable, and there's always ways I can be improving it, and really should be sometimes, and I'm not as conscious of. But I always appreciate feedback as well from people. I don't take it personally. As long as you I don't even care if you insult me, as long as you at least give me like a reason what I was doing wrong and why. Like, then I'm happy to make changes. So it's evolving. It's an evolving process, and I think it's good to look at other casters for ideas on how you can improve.
What do you think was your favorite game to cast, if you can remember one specifically?
I feel like I just thought of this one the other day, and then trying to remember. I mean, there's been a lot of like interesting. It was really, definitely interesting casting that Rogue versus Infamy. I'll tell you what, that one was I think one of my favorites that was like, normally these are kind of bad to cast, but the Elevate versus Vitality 10-0 from last Invitationals on Xbox was like, that was the most hyped I've been on the mic.
Okay.
For sure. Like I was almost yelling too. So that was a very, very hype match. I really liked that one.
I have to go back and watch that. I think I only watched it like live when it happened. I don't think I've watched it again since.
I need to go back and watch it again too. It's probably embarrassing and cringeworthy. I watch myself again.
And when you're in Poland and you're not casting, what do you do usually?
So I a lot of time, especially this last season where I came in kind of part way, a lot of prep work, a lot of watching VODs, because it takes a long time to watch all this footage. And now that there's more regions, it's like even more. So I was spending a lot of time compiling stats from APAC and things like that, just really trying to prepare myself for each game, so that I know what I'm talking about, and so that I'm not just coming in there just blurting out whatever my opinion is only.
Yeah.
But then also, like just downtime playing the game a lot. I actually end up playing more when I'm casting, because I'm, just focused purely on the game than when I'm at home. Because when I'm at home, I have to worry about paying the bills and things like that. But when you're in Poland, like they're covering that, and so like I don't have to focus on that, so I can play more. And just hanging out, talking to people. Like it's more of a good chance to socialize with a lot of the other players. As well, to try and get an idea what's going on in the scene, just to get to know like what people think about stuff. So it is kind of a little more, it's almost like work and recreational at the same time, which just helps if you really like this game. So it's a bit of that. And then obviously, free time to kind of like eat, walk, chill out. Unfortunately, the casters, we all don't hang out with each other as much as we like. Kix and Taro definitely did more so, and did some traveling and stuff, which was cool. I was usually a bit more busy. We didn't end up doing that. Some of them are streaming, like Kix, and especially did a lot of streaming. Unfortunately, this last time we didn't have good streaming PCs.
Oh, okay.
So we weren't able to do as much of that kind of stuff as we'd want to. I know Blood does a lot of streaming as well.
Yeah.
So did Panky when he was there. So I know that takes up some of the time also.
Okay. And the next question is from Ripley. It says, what do you do to prepare and ensure your analysis is correct and accurate?
So I like to use statistics as like a foundation, but not as like the entire thing. So the idea is I like to get a lot of statistics to provide some objective analysis to kind of counterbalance and check my like soft analysis, like where I'm just kind of formulating my opinions based off what I've seen. Because there's times where you'll like sway too far on one side or the other without kind of the reality check of looking at the raw stats. So it's like it's a bit of both in terms of that. And then also just like you really want to like watch a lot of games in terms of like there's stuff you subtly pick up by watching the games that you might not get by looking at stats or by looking at a lot of other stuff. So it's a lot of VOD watching because you can't always catch the games live. So it's a lot of VODs. Not to mention you can pause and rewind and stuff like that with VODs where you can't with the live game. So, I mean, as bad as it sounds, I more often watch VODs than I do live games, partially for that reason. Although, you know, I try and catch the live games if I'm able to. But a lot of times, it's even if I do, I still have to go back to the VODs. So thankfully, there's stuff too, like, you know, being able to go back to the VODs and play them at like 1.5x or 2x speed.
Yeah.
So you can kind of get through and get the gist of stuff or pick up scores or whatever without having to kind of spend like ridiculous amount of times. Because you keep in mind, like one play day is like up to 5 hours long.
Yeah.
So it's a lot of time spent. Not to mention you want to kind of like spend time looking around in like all the like some of the discords and things like that to get an idea what people are talking about or what people are doing outside of directly socializing.
Mm-hmm.
And then the socializing definitely helps as well because like, you know, for one thing, you want to know what people are thinking and doing, but for the other, you know, it's fun to be on good terms with a lot of these other players. And then it makes the LANs that much more fun when you get to meet them in person.
Yeah.
But it helps you also understand their play and what they think about other people's plays, like their opinions as well is useful to know. So it's a lot of that stuff I was talking about, you know, what I'm doing in Poland.
Yeah.
It's a lot of different things to prepare.
Okay.
And shout outs to Ripley, of course.
Yeah, Ripley is great. Have you played the new map yet? I know you was on TTS, but I don't know if you got a chance to play the new map.
Yeah, luckily, I literally only had time to do one casual. After I did a custom on it first, and I had time to do one casual. And luckily, I don't know if it's weighted or not, but I got into that map. So I just played like the layout was a little confusing at first, but I feel like for some reason I actually almost sometimes understand the layout better by playing it in a real match than by in custom. Because in custom, like sometimes the spots are less memorable when there's no actually things happening with them. So I found like the custom was good to kind of get the gist, but then like playing it in the actual custom, or I mean actual casual or whatever, because I'm not ranked 20 on TTS, so I couldn't play ranked.
Yeah.
It was interesting. Like I like the new map a lot. I think it has some interesting ideas. I feel like there will be probably some random problems that come out of it because it's such a different take on how spawning works, for example.
Yep.
But I liked the idea that there's like places inside the map that the defenders can't get to rather than just places outside.
Yeah.
So like, for example, all the ventilation stuff and the windows on the outside that you can barricade, but you can't get out of.
Yeah.
It has some new takes. I think I would like to see it be something that's worth rotating into Pro League like next season. Hopefully they allow it during invitationals is what I would like to see, because I would like to see how it plays out in a pro setting without there being 7 weeks of it first.
Yeah, maybe I doubt they would though, just because the pros are so like they don't like picking the new maps until there's a nice formed meta. So I don't know.
But that's the thing is like, I'd like to see them make the finals, like the grand finals, be on it.
Yeah, or well, it's a best of 5 now, isn't it? So maybe just force one of the maps to be tower. Yeah.
Well, yeah, because you'll be, I don't know. I'd like to see that. It'd be fun to see how people do that. Because like, we have seen invitationals bring out the lesser picked maps. For example, Skyscraper was a big one at the first invitational. Mm-hmm. So it could definitely be a factor. I'd like to see them include it. They only recently have stopped forcing the new map in, like the theme park. Because before that, they did force them in. So like that would really be only one time they've done that. So it's not a huge exception to say like, let's put tower in the map pool. But it's like, it's up to you. You have a lot of time before invitational to prepare for that, if that is announced. You know, like if you know what the map pool is ahead of time, like it's your job to prepare for that. I know some teams don't like to have to prepare for too many maps, but it's like a lot of the maps are old. Like a lot of the maps you should already be fairly prepared for it. Like adding one new one should be as big a deal now as it was, say, last year.
Yeah, Coastline and not Theme Park. What was the one before that? Skyscraper. I like the only 2 new ones because Theme Park's not in it.
Yeah. And
unless they add Tower, then Tower won't be in it. So it should be, and like I think those maps are fairly set in the meta. So it should be. It shouldn't be too much of a challenge to look at the new map. Yeah,
because they skipped essentially 2 seasons of map, 2 seasons of maps, right? No, I mean I guess Theme Park, and because there was a season we skipped.
The Polish map is the one that's missing.
Yeah. And so because we skipped 2 seasons of maps, that's plenty of time for them to have just established better meta on the old maps and then have time to focus on the new one. I don't think it's too big of an ask to put Tower in there. I'd like to see it personally, but again,
me too.
Now that it's out on the TCS, once it comes out next week, people will find problems with it, assuming they can work out those problems first. And the question is it going to be in the qualifiers? I guess is a big thing. I know there's people like wondering like, will the new ops be in the qualifiers? Will the new map be in the qualifiers? That's up to ESL to decide, but I hope so.
They should be out by then, right? By the time qualified starts.
I think they come out for season pass holders the first week of the qualifiers, and then like for everyone else like the second week or something like that. So I think it's a situation where not everyone would have full access to them, but
right.
I mean, probably season pass people. Like if you expect to get money from this game, put some into it.
Yeah. The way CCS do it is they just ban it for a week, and then after that it's fine.
I know there's some people that are concerned about doing that as well, introducing new ops into the middle of qualifiers as well. So it's tricky, no matter how you slice it. Like you don't want to ban them for the whole season of it or the whole set of it, but at the same time, like I don't know, it's tricky. Personally, I like to say like put them in, and if you have a season pass, you get to play them. If not, just at least practice on the TTS right now to figure out how to play against them.
Yeah. What do you think of the new ops?
I think they're interesting. I don't think any of them are really must-pick status, but I think they all bring something interesting that I know people will experiment with. Now that we have like, I don't even want to say 4 regions because APAC is 4 onto itself.
Yeah.
So now that we have like a ridiculous amount of regions to experiment with, and the invitationals always being like a ridiculous amount of metas all mashed together. Like last invitationals, it's really hard to do analysis for invitationals. Let me tell you, because people are just going to do the most crazy, unexpected things in invitationals because they're bringing all these different metas, all these different teams from all these different regions. I mean, yes, it's the same regions that were involved in this last finals, but it's bigger. It has less play days going up to it, stuff like that. So that being said, I know there's a lot of people that are considering Zofia to be an important pick. And like, there was always the idea like, oh, is this to replace Ashe? But the lack of 3-speed and possibly a bigger hitbox, I think makes it kind of a non-starter, unfortunately. Like they just can't seem to replace Ashe, I swear. Like Hibana was thought to, maybe Hibana will replace Ashe. Like, because it's like, it's still a breach charge on a wall, but it's for a reinforced wall. And she gets 3 of them, and she's got a good gun, and she's, 3-speed and like a small hitbox. Like that's the only problem with them making all the females 3-speed on the attack side is you end up with a bunch of attackers that have small hitboxes because they're skinnier.
Yeah.
And I know it's weird. It's like a weird form of like sexism meets esports in terms of like competitive edge that you get from playing as females. But that's something that is a factor in terms of like 3-speed attackers.
Yeah.
And so Ashe having a small hitbox like that and the 3-speed and useful abilities in a really good gun makes it hard to replace that. So Zofia, like, may not be much of a replacement. May replace Sledge, maybe, where some people play Sledge, just because Sledge isn't necessarily always opening up as much as Buck does. When people play him. And she's got a grenade launcher instead of grenades. So I don't know. It'll be interesting because the concussion grenades could be pretty useful, but they're not lethal. So like you really need to like have a way to finish that off, to use those in some way, right? Because non-lethal stuff works better for defenders than attackers because non-lethal stuff can burn up time. Mm-hmm. So like, for example, Ella's mines that are concussion as well can be used to stop a defuse. And so things like that factor more in the defender's favor. So not sure if that would, but again, I think she'll be used at least some of the time because people will try and use her.
Yeah.
Whether or not it works kind of determines whether or not it becomes a long-term thing. Dokkaebi, I think, is really interesting in terms of the usefulness of the abilities, but it is also somewhat situational. Like, I think it's a great counter to Valkyrie. Mm-hmm. So I think that's awesome because Valkyrie has been such an important thing on certain maps. So like, there's certain maps where runouts and jump outs and spawn peaks and things like that are really important. So having a counter to Valkyrie in that sense can be good, although you're not going to stop spawn peaks with Dokkaebi, right? Because it's a little too early to be able to do anything. But it is interesting to like have something that can find the cameras besides IQ. Mm-hmm. Potentially, because once you hack the cameras, you can look through them and see where they're at. But for outside cameras, that might be too late unless someone jumps outside anyways. Yeah. But I think it'll be a very situational use operator unless your guns are really, really good in terms of. And I haven't played enough of the guns to make any kind of judgment. And Pro League players are going to be in a much better position to judge the usefulness of a gun because they have much better reflexes and aim than me. So I think it comes down to her guns, how often she'll be used situationally, because you need to be able to use her for more than just. She needs to be able to somewhat make the kills to get those phones to drop.
Yeah.
And the ringtones thing I think is pretty cool. I don't think Echo being an exception to it's going to be a big deal, but I think that's a nice little extra touch.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't know. I mean, that might be a weird thing that comes into play, but I doubt that will matter outside of casual or ranked.
Okay.
So and then Vigil, I think is really interesting, but I think his ability isn't strong enough to pick him over other defenders. And that's what it comes down to. If we had less defenders, I think Vigil would be useful.
Yeah.
But because there's so many other useful defenders, I mean, unless people are going to drop Valkyrie or something in favor of him because of Dokubi, like I don't know. I like his ability, but it's too, gives itself away too much with the distortion that shows on the drones.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, yes, it does work across multiple floors, like a mute jammer in that sense. So there is some element of that, but I think they either need to decrease or increase the range so that he's not so easily pinpointed.
Yeah.
Or that he is easily pinpointed, but only if you get close to him. Like either way, I could see working, and they would probably need to make those tweaks before I think he's really pro league viable right now. And however, that being said, I could see some interesting use of if they don't change his shotgun, it could even be used for spawn peaks because it is pretty much lethal in 1 to 2 shots. It's almost like having a Glaz without an ACOG on defense. And so, I mean, I don't expect that to be a big thing, but there's a chance we could see some cheeky spawn peaks with that shotgun.
Maybe.
Being a thing, it's typically fun.
I have a feeling they're going to change that shotgun though. I like the shotgun. I think like maybe it reaches a little bit too far, but other than that, I quite like it. I like the weapon. It's a weapon that relies on you to be accurate. I really.
But it's
like
a bit sniper 90ish, right?
Yeah, I think that's the issue with it.
Or sniper 80, whatever.
But not that it would matter too much. But I don't think it wall bangs. From what I was trying, I couldn't.
Mm-hmm.
I went into hostage and was trying to shoot the hostage through a wall with it, and it just wouldn't connect. But I don't know if that's a bug and you can shoot and then shoot through the hole you made, and that would work. So as long as you don't move your mouse, it'll go in the same place. But I don't know. Yeah, I don't know if that would make much of a difference to him being viable or not.
Yeah, it's tricky to say. Like again, like it'll come down somewhat to the guns. A lot of times, someone decides if someone's viable. Like for example, Ying would probably be played a lot more if her gun was better.
Yeah.
And so that's a situation where the gun kind of same with Capitao. I think if Capitao his gun was a lot better, I think we'd see him play a lot more because he's a 3-speed attacker and has a useful utility somewhat. And so you combine that with a good gun and he's playable, Yeah. I mean, obviously he was more playable with grenades, but nonetheless, I think the guns are oftentimes the deciding factor. And I think with these 3 ops, even more so than some of the previous ones because none of their gadgets are must uses.
Yeah, okay. That question was asked by Trezor, by the way.
What's up, Trezor?
So, I wanted to know your thoughts on the Infamy Shuffle. Today they announced that Neptune's has been dropped. They've not announced the replacement yet, but he has been dropped.
Yeah, I know there was some talks on the Pro League Reddit about like suggesting like Chapstick or Fox. Personally, I would suggest Chapstick if I were to pick someone. I think Chapstick is a great replacement for Neptunes because like especially playing a good Hibana, I think he plays a good Mira if I remember well as well. So I think he would be a great pickup for it because I think he's great if he gels with the team. I think sometimes like there's been synergy issues, which I don't think were on Chapstick's side personally, but I don't know because it's always opinions versus opinions.
Yeah.
But I think he would be a great replacement. Hopefully that's the case. I mean, Infamy, they kind of got in to land through a fluke, but nonetheless they'll still be in Pro League next season, so it is important who they pick up.
Yeah,
and hopefully they improve as a team. I know they've got Santa as their analyst as well, so hopefully he's been able to kind of like pick through what worked, what didn't over the season, and what worked at LAN, stuff like that, and be able to help them really go into the next season strong if they could pick up a good replacement for Neptunes. So I think Neptunes was a good player. So it's unfortunate to lose him, but you know how the NA shuffle is. Always people got to go. I'm curious if any of the top teams, I mean, I don't mean that as a knock on Infamy, but like any of the top well-known teams like Eva Geniuses or Rogue or stuff like that will end up with a shuffle this next season.
Well, I was watching Canadian's stream yesterday, and he said in it that there's going to be no changes, but Elevate said that before last season, and then they kicked Chapstick. But
yeah,
at the moment, there doesn't seem to be any changes. I know, just in case anyone doesn't follow me on Twitter, that yesterday the ESL Pro League website was bugged out, and it said that S-Nose and Penta kicked 2 players, but that was just a bug. They are still I mean, Meepy confirmed that Esnos are still together, so I'm going to assume that Penna are still. There's nothing been made public, and they're on the actual ESL website. It's all fine. So, well, what do you think about the NA Shuffle in general?
I think, like I said earlier, about like it's kind of the same core people for the most part. So like, most of Evil Genius Evil Genius, Flipside, and Rogue are like kind of the core people that have been shuffled around. Though Flipside is the one that's mostly stayed to the same people.
Yeah,
they haven't shuffled as much. But like as far as like the kind of core of NA goes, those teams are kind of the core ones. And as the shuffle happens, like people need to move sometimes for synergy reasons. Like this game that is so. I mean, you look back at something like League of Legends or something like that, where there's these earlier ones where like team synergy is really important because toxicity can build up when you're super dependent on each other to execute things. Whereas like if you could kind of be like you were saying about Battlefield, one where it's individual execution, like whatever, it doesn't matter as much about synergy. You can just put a bunch of top fragger kind of people together and call it a day. Whereas with this game, you really need to be able to communicate well, to get along well, to be able to kind of understand what each other do and anticipate it. You see that, for example, like Rome duos, like Laxing and Skies. Like if those two ever break up, like I'm going to be really sad because they work so well together. Things like that, they really matter. And so it's hard because you have certain roles that you need to replace as well. So you're like, oh, I need to replace someone that can play these roles. And sometimes they're less desirable.
Yeah.
Like, oh, hey, I need a new Thermite main. And, people might look down on that unless they're a good Fragmite, as they put it.
Yeah.
It varies. Like sometimes this is a really good thing because people need to really kind of shore up their team. And sometimes someone's just not happy or not working. And then you have people that end up having to leave for medical reasons, like King Leo, things like that. So, you have real life impinging on this. And especially if your team doesn't make it all the way, then all of a sudden you're not making much money from it, which is a case in that people have to juggle real life versus, whatever. But then you have teams like Canadian says about Evil Geniuses, where like he was just trying to compose the best team of all of his friends to have a good time. Yeah. Which he said multiple times before he changed teams around. But hopefully he's not a hypocrite and stays like true to his word in that, like, because he said this is the team that ideally would have been the team to start with. And so because even though they got day one knocked out, like hopefully it's a situation where they go like, we still are the team we wanted to be. Like, let's not change that. And especially now they got picked up by big org, like even more reason to stay consistent. Unless the org, for example, like says like, you need to improve this guy or kick this guy because his stats are bad. Like I hope that's not a case where orgs start meddling like that.
Well, he said again in the stream yesterday that they're fairly confident still because they're the only ones that put up a fight against Ents, whereas everyone else got 2-0'd.
They're the only one. Yeah, they don't want to put up a fight against anyone.
Yeah,
in terms of that, yeah.
It
is interesting to see so little 2-1s in entire finals like that.
Yeah, it was definitely interesting.
At least Canadian's gonna feel a little bit better losing to the winner, right?
Yeah, that's true. But they reminded me of APAC LAN, where the first day it was all 2-1s. Every match was 2-1, but then day 2 all 2-0s, like easy 2-0s. It was interesting, like there's how I don't know just how that worked out.
That's actually been a trend for a while. Something I've noticed where you always expect like the second day, because it's supposed to be closer matches, to go to 3 maps. But I've seen a lot of times where it's been the exact opposite. Like you said, because it's like almost like teams are feeling each other out on day 1. Yeah. And kind of like not refined yet, not warmed up yet. And they're kind of like going a bit more back and forth as they kind of jockey for position. But once that team makes it through to the next day, they either 2-0 or get 2-0'd half the time. And it's a weird phenomenon that's counterintuitive. But I've seen it happen a lot. It's not some new thing or something that was just specific to this finals. It seems to be very common.
Yeah, I don't know if it's that a lot of Siege teams are like momentum based. Like I noticed that with Ents. Once they started winning, they started winning. Like especially with Black Dragons, they were down 4-0. They won one round, and then it's like, oh, okay, we're just gonna keep doing this. This feels much better. And then they just built off that momentum, and just like knocked down Black Dragons as they built themselves back up, and then took the win in the end, 2-0, easy.
Yeah, I mean, you have obviously the 6th-round comeback from Ents. Yeah. It's an interesting example. I think it's partially momentum, which is a psychological thing, in terms of like tilted, not tilted, and confident, because confidence does play a role in this game for sure. And I think if you want to learn how psychology plays a factor, watch Shate play in clutch situations, because his chill factor, like, really, like, I almost feel like Shate should just kill his teammates at the beginning of the round, then just go 1v5 and somehow ace every round. Like, just because, people like that are just much better in a situation when they're down for whatever reason, because they're good at not taking the pressure, and that works out in their favor because the other team gets overconfident when it's like a 4v1. But there's also the factor that we talk about a lot in Pro League, which is adaptation. The idea that when you're partway through, you need to adapt to what the other team's doing. That's why you see a lot of top teams lose the first couple rounds, things like that. And I think that factors into momentum as well, because when you have momentum, sometimes it's because the other team isn't making those adaptations. So you can kind of do the same things that are working over and over. And until you're forced to change them, you don't have to. And then you can execute on them even better because you know what's working. So I think both those two factor in against teams that don't adapt. Like, teams need to, like, really look at what they're doing. That's why you see, like, sometimes the advantage of tactical timeouts isn't so much that it's a momentum swing and momentum breaker, as it is let's figure out what we're doing wrong and change up what we're doing while we have this short break. So I think those two things actually do, like, work hand in hand in a lot of ways. So it looks like it could be either or.
Do you think it may already be in Siege, but I don't think it is. But in, like, CS:GO, they have a thing where you say we need to take a break and just look at our stats for like 2 minutes.
Timeouts.
Yeah.
I think I know they were working on a land pause feature, right? And I don't even know what the status of that is, because I thought that was out or something. So that may be something that they're able to do, like, at some point, is do a straight up land pause.
You can pause in the menu select, but you can't pause once you're actually in game.
Yeah, so I don't know how they'll work out. I know, we have so many problems with rehosts and stuff like that that the game's going to have to kind of address situations that come out of that may work in the benefit of including timeouts, so that teams don't. I don't know if any team has ever done this, but I know there's the potential for teams to rage quit to cause a rehost, or to purposely do something to cause a rehost, or to for whatever reason, like, call it a technical timeout. And there are situations where that's worked in a team's favor that you could make that accusation. But either way, it is a possibility that is something that is needed, so that people maybe don't feel like they have to do stuff like that they don't have to lie, that they can call a legit timeout. And you'll probably see that, of course, used when you're down, like when ENCE is on a 5-round comeback and you're like, oh crap, like, we need a timeout now.
When Evil Geniuses joined Siege, what was your initial reaction?
I know there's been a lot of talk, like, behind the scenes, like rumors and stuff like that, about the interest of big orgs, in terms of, like, this org said that they're interested, but they're still looking at it, and so on and so forth. And it tends to be this domino effect sort of thing, right? So once we got Rogue in, it was like, okay, well, now they're consider this more seriously, but it's only, Rogue and Flipside right now are the two big ones. Flipside hasn't made it very far every time. Rogue just out the season, so it's like, And so I think that was a good morale boost. Like, I was very excited that, like, Evil Geniuses jumped in, because I think they needed, like, you need more people to confirm, like, that there's a reason to be in this. And the more big orgs that do that, the domino effect continues. And then the small orgs are like, why are we not in this? And so the big orgs kind of need to spearhead the way. So I think that was a very important thing. And then Continuum was not really necessarily a real org in the term of the way we think about real orgs a lot of times. So I think they deserved to be part of a big org. Once Rogue picked up, I don't even know what they were at the moment. Were they most wanted at the time? I can't remember what their name was at the time.
No, neither can I.
I think they were orgless because they just dropped Vertical. That's right. They were orgless right before the finals. So that was that was like a big thing. But then that was a very last minute thing as well. Like, just before the finals, like, I remember King George literally telling me, like, at the hotel that they were signing papers. So that was very last minute. But that was a good confidence booster. And then once Evil Geniuses jumps in just before a LAN event, right, I think that really speaks to, like I said, people potentially jumping in before invitationals. So to me, like, this game depends on, as an esport, depends on money, right? Because Ubisoft throws a lot of money at this game to try and keep it going in the esports scene. and it needs the confidence of the outside world to be able to continue doing that or to justify that. And that means people buying Siege, means people buying stuff in the game, season passes, so that they're seeing a return on their investment because Ubisoft's still a business. But it also needs then the support of the esports ecology and economy, which is like the orgs being involved, the org charms, merchandise. You look at like real physical sports, right? Like how they make money and how the whole thing works. Obviously, normal real physical games, like they don't play games online, right?
Yeah.
In physical sports, you don't see like football played online. It's played in person, which means they sell tickets.
Yeah.
Right. So they make money off each one. We don't make money off play days. So we need other kinds of involvement in terms of like things that help justify Ubisoft continuing to push this game forward. And the bigger orgs that jump into this, the more people at Ubisoft can say, yes, we need to keep investing in this. Maybe we need to put even more people involved in this, or dedicate more to this esports side of things. Like better spectator tools and things like that instead of just DLC. So for me, it's very exciting every time one of those things happen. Like one of those things that looks like maybe a small thing, but I think is, especially when my career depends on this game succeeding, it's a big deal for me personally.
Yeah.
And I'm very excited for them, and I really hope they stick with the Continuum guys, because I think they're a great team, and I think that will do them well in the end. Even though obviously it didn't this last time, but I think, as you said, they were the only ones to put up a fight. So I still think it was a good showing for the org.
Yeah.
Whether or not they won. And I do hope that, if Ninjas and Pajamas get involved, they pick a team that does well. And then APAC, maybe get some more orgs as well. Like I know there are some orgs involved in the APAC region, and I hope some of them make it into the invitationals. So we can see like these people. I mean, I'm almost a fan of the idea of org slots, org-owned slots in the Pro League, stuff like that. I know there's pros and cons to that.
Yeah.
But I think it'd be interesting. I like their involvement as long as they're not shady. I know there are orgs that can be shady, and esports being such a huge money growth industry right now, like there's a lot of people that kind of are a little unscrupulous at times.
Yeah.
So hopefully that doesn't taint Siege at some point.
Yeah.
Luckily we don't have like skin throwing and stuff like that at the moment, but we have had accusations of match fixing and things like that in the past.
Yeah, well, that was the thing with Vertical Gaming as well, wasn't there? I mean, he fixed his errors, but that was a big thing for the scene. When that was announced.
Well, because they were talking about the gaming house stuff, and that's something that NA doesn't have
exactly,
yet.
Yeah.
And I mean, I'm glad Brazil made it to the finals as well, because they do have gaming houses down there, and like I'm not sure if they have like really big orgs down there, like how big the orgs are. I know Santos Dexterity was a pretty big one, for example. So I'm not familiar with like the size of the orgs down there, but I know the game is huge down there, like bigger than Counter-Strike from what I've heard. And so Black Dragons, for example, making it to the finals, I think those kinds of things will help orgs grow down there as well. And then the APAC region, and of course EU has a series of orgs, they're already because of involvement in other games in the EU region. So
yeah, okay. Is there any?
It's just NA needs to grow.
Yeah, pretty much. Is there any orgs that you want to join, like that you really want to see them in Siege?
I mean, I haven't been following like the Counter-Strike scene and stuff like that as well to know who's like kind of the big orgs at the moment. But I know stuff like obviously people see like to see Cloud9 or like Optical, things like that, or like those kind of ones I think are well known. Like I think name recognition is important.
Yeah.
So the more recognizable the name is, like Ninjas in Pajamas or Cloud9, the better it does for bringing attention to Siege.
Yeah.
And so it's really like a marketing thing in some ways more than anything else. And so like the better the team or the better marketing org, like the one that has better social media marketing, the one that calls better attention to their teams and their games, that does interviews with their players, that promotes them, stuff like that. Those are the ones I would like to see come over, because those will bring the most attention. And that's all really a game needs, because at the end of the day, people kind of bandwagon. And the more it looks like everyone's excited about this game, the more everyone will be excited to jump in on that and bandwagon with everyone else. So it's just about media attention. And really, for as little media attention as this game gets, it's doing like way better than it should be.
Yeah, that's fair enough. If you had to sell this game to the orgs, what would you say?
I'd say it's a game that really is focused on teams, more so maybe than other individual players in some other games. And so that focus on teams just brings extra focus to orgs in terms of how they go and stuff like that. And then there's always a lot of talk about orgs among the Pro League and stuff like that. So it's something that there's a big amount of interest in, which then benefits the org. And the org's icon is used places. We have the charms now for orgs things like that. So I think there's growing support for orgs, and then now is the time to get involved while there's less teams involved. I think it's how some of these orgs that are big in CSGO got big is because they got in earlier.
Yeah.
And managed to do well. And I think, now's the time to get involved if you want to establish your name, especially as an org that might not be as big. Get in now and like try and, but you need to treat your players well, like, because there's a lot of people that switch orgs because, the org just wasn't treating them great or they got a better offer.
Yeah.
And it's unfortunate because, it is sometimes harder to justify, but the prize pools have been increasing. Some particular teams and players have been more and more consistent in terms of doing well each season.
Mm-hmm.
So stuff like that, I think, gives a good opportunity to get involved. And now that there's more regions, there's more opportunity to pick someone up outside of maybe the default regions. Like, let's say NA is all booked up. The good teams all have good orgs. Look to APAC. There's opportunities to get involved now while there's a growing scene, as opposed to one that's kind of already affixed.
Yeah, that's fair enough. If there's anyone from Cloud9 watching, I get into the game just because I want a Cloud9 charm. I think they have like the greatest logo. That's all I want. You can leave after that. So you mentioned APAC. What is your thoughts with them joining Pro League?
I think a lot of people whine a bit too much about losing spots to that. I think it's only fair to give every region 2 spots. I think it was actually, if you think about it, unfair to Brazil that NA and EU got 3 spots before. So a situation where obviously math worked out where everyone gets 2 spots now, but it is harder because like if you're APAC, you got 4 regions or 4 sub regions to contend with to get there. So I hope that actually helps them grow fast enough to get up to speed. I think regardless of whether they won or lost, they got knocked out day 1, but they were also up against really hard matchups. And so like a lot of teams got knocked out day 1.
Yeah.
I mean, you got Evil Geniuses getting knocked out day 1, so I wouldn't feel too bad for APAC. I feel like...
Sorry to interrupt again. Pojo did a good tweet where he said that APAC had the same scores last season as NA in finals.
That's funny, and appropriate. NA has not been doing great.
No.
But that was, that was good. I mean, Mantis even took 2 rounds off of Penta, which was, not a bad start. Obviously, a lot of growing to be had for the region. Brazil came in a little bit more aggressive, I think, than other teams were ready for. Like Brazil season 1, when they first came into the finals, they had LAN experience because they were doing the whole season on LAN.
Yeah.
So they'd been well practiced in that. And they also had a very aggressive play style that kind of worked out against a lot of the regions. The aggressive play style of APAC, I don't think has been working out as well for them, but I do think they will be stronger next season. And I think it's hard to say whether introducing them now was the right choice because you have this gap now where you don't have another season of play days before invitationals.
Yeah.
So they don't have that chance to go back and improve as well. They're going to have to scrim instead and work their way up. So that is a little bit more difficult, but at the same time, it does kind of give them some gap to get better before the next season 1 starts. So I do hope that Ainz is able to go back and really improve for invitationals since we know for sure they're going to that.
Yeah.
Because I think the better showing that they put on, it helps grow the game to 4 sub-regions instead of just 1. Like, you go to the game in EU, that's a lot of little countries. You go to the game in NA, that's cool. You go to the game in Brazil, like these are smaller regions. But if you go to the game in APAC, that's, like 16 teams, or no, I'm sorry, 32 teams that are interested, that are doing stuff as opposed to each individual 8, team region. So I think it's even more important now than ever to really help APAC get there because that will bring a huge influx of players that we need.
As well, building on what you said with Ainz, they had, at this final, they had 2 subs in replacement and they also had no coach, which would have, I imagine, hindered them quite a bit compared to everyone else. Yeah,
we were talking with Cabagist on the ANZ podcast that we did. Make sure to, if you want to check that out, it's like at the R6_ANZ Twitch was on there. So with we were talking about some of that stuff with him because he was the one left behind. He was the 6th man, kind of left behind. And so it was unfortunate that it worked out that way. And we've had situations like that where people have had to deal with subs. Elevate's had to deal with that a few times.
Yeah.
When Geo wasn't able to make LAN events, for example, and they had to bring Bosco stuff like that. So it's not like something that usually benefits a team. It usually is a big detriment. We've rarely seen a team come in with subs and do better rather than worse.
Yeah.
We have seen, for example, Penta run with the 6-man roster, with Falco being the sub in, but 6-man roster is hard to do without org support because ESL is only going to pay for 5 people to come out as well. So that's harder to do. But I do hope teams really don't relegate their subs. The problem, I think part of the problem with it is the way subs are treated. And some of it's just a logistical problem. But subs, being a sub role is basically the same as being benched, which is unfortunate because it takes a big hit to the player's motivation and mentality to be on the team, to be subbed. When you're subbed and you're benched, you just generally your first instinct is to quit the team. So you're rarely going to have a lot of subs that are going to be super participatory and up to par. And that's an unfortunate side effect of the way the scene is right now. And I think that needs to change because if these teams want to be true professionals and want to be playing this for a living, they really need to treat subs as an integral part of the team. The way Penta talked about the 6-man team, and I say talked because obviously they don't have that anymore. When they were at that last finals where they had Falco, that's a big deal, I think. And so I think to factor that in, you need to make sure your subs are up to par so you don't end up in a situation like Ainz did or that Elevate have done, where if you have to bring a sub because real life stuff happens and people can't always make it, that your team doesn't just lose land because of that.
Is there anything that you'd like to see introduced to the game? It can be like either just gameplay in general or Pro League stuff, like a new spectator system or...
So, I mean, 2 things that I think would help improve people's skill and warm up, things like that, that I personally would use for practice and training is one thing I mentioned earlier, which is a deathmatch mode. And I know that sounds dumb, but there's just times that I kind of want to just go in and just kind of play like at practice shooting, things like that against real people. And just the way the gameplay works, the way you die and then you're out and this like that, it just kind of makes it hard to do that. And for the same reason, deathmatch is a thing in Counter-Strike. It's exactly the same reason because you die and you're out. Obviously, this game has the advantage of like cameras and things like that. But just in terms of like really getting comfortable with operators and playing, however, I can understand why that could be difficult because a lot of operator gadgets, for example, then all of a sudden, what do you respawn with that gadget again? Now do you have like 6 Hibana charges because you died? And like those kind of logistical problems could make deathmatch very difficult to design. But the other thing I would say that then is kind of like a side to that could be introduced first is just customization for terrorist hunt. So meaning like going in and being able to turn on or off suicide bombers, C4, maybe some of the other options as well. Rather than having a difficulty setting, maybe just a series of settings that overall increase or decrease the difficulty. I think would be a huge thing, and I hope wouldn't be a huge technical challenge for the team. I know sometimes like adding new stuff incurs a lot of UI work, which slows stuff down because they have to build all the UIs. Like, for example, switching data centers is still done via the INI file because they kind of rushed that in there. So I have to build the UI for it. So, I mean, that worked out because then it discourages people from doing it all the time. But that would, I think, be a big boon to practicing. Like, there's a lot of people that use Terrorist Hunt to warm up, aim practice. I use it like that myself. I like to go in and just, practice headshots, stuff like that. But having suicide bombers, yes, while that does force you to practice headshots, is very obnoxious to deal with. Same with C4. Especially if you want to practice movement as well. You don't want to deal with C4 and barbed wire when you're just trying to practice moving around the map. So stuff like that, I think, would be really, really helpful. The terrorist hunt one, I think, for me, is the highest priority. I was joking with other pro players that like we'd almost like to see a season like an Operation Health where all they do is just improve terrorist hunt.
Already,
like I would give up DLC for a season just for them to make terrorist hunt like really, really good as a training resource. So that would be ideal, but obviously, like I'm not sure where that lies in their priorities, but it is something we have addressed to Ubisoft, so it's not like they're completely unaware. I just don't know where their priorities lie. But that's the big thing. And then also, like, I think there's definitely some things they could play with in the game design space in terms of operators that would be interesting. But it's hard to say because like people use stuff weird, and sometimes the design's gotten a little centric, I think, on operators. Because I think some of that was they transitioned over to new game designers. Because some of the old game design team isn't there anymore, and there's a lot more new guys. And I think they have different ways of going about the game design for operators. So they've definitely been taking a different approach, which has definitely been a little more, I guess, just different than how the original operators really were designed. So it'd be interesting to see what they come up with. I feel like a lot of the operators have been kind of unexpected ideas, which has been good. So it's hard to say, like, I almost want to say, like, oh, they should have this kind of operator. And a lot of times they do end up putting that operator in at some point. Like, I remember when I was doing the focus group, I was like, there should be someone with like laser traps There should be someone that can use sticky cameras, or like the two things I was saying that they really needed, because at the time they didn't have Capcan and they didn't have Valkyrie.
Yeah.
So stuff like that definitely ended up like, I was like, why isn't there someone that can hack Defender cameras? I mean, these are things that are obvious things. I'm not like saying I'm like a genius or something.
You're not saying you're in control of UB.
What's it? Yeah, I'm just gonna go over to France or Montreal, whichever.
Yeah.
But yeah, like, I know there's definitely a lot of good operators that could put in at this point. So I think if they just keep that, the big thing for me in terms of new content isn't so much that they need to introduce these new maps. It's that I feel like that map rework is really important, and it's unfortunate it's not going to be right away, because I know there's a lot of maps that could be more viable with small changes.
Yeah.
The one thing we talk about a lot, for example, is Clubhouse could be more viable if you just connected, for example, the office space to the cash room.
Yeah. Via
like some kind of indoor space, like, like just a walkway or something like that, because having the ability to rotate between those two would completely change how you could play that map. So stuff like that, where it's reworks that I wish were minor, but the way the map tools work and things like that is difficult. And I've spoken with a lot of Ubisoft people on why that's difficult, and I kind of understand, like, they have a lot of restrictions on what they can do with maps right now.
Yeah.
And so I think they're moving towards their improvement of their map tools is probably why that rework's scheduled for later. But I do hope that during Operation Health they were able to improve some of that stuff, because I think we have a lot of great maps. Sometimes they're just lacking one particular thing that can make them more viable, and it's not just moving stuff for spawn kills. And then maybe even some more bomb spots, or some tweaks of where bomb spots are. Things like that would be great. I'd really like to see that, because I don't think it's necessarily we need to introduce all these new maps for competitive. Some of these maps can be just for casual or ranked, but some of these new maps for competitive, or some of the old maps for competitive, need to really be improved.
Yeah.
And they know what new operators they're introducing down the line, so they can factor that into those map reworks as well, because how operators will change how the map's played.
Yeah.
They can also factor that into those reworks, I think.
Okay. One of my criticisms with Sophia was that they're putting too many things into one operator.
It's like a Caveira thing, kind of.
Yeah, where it's like, see, I haven't played it too much, so like this is just when they announced her fully, but it's like she can revive herself. Her concussion mines can bounce off walls, and she has like the grenade launcher that can also shoot flashbangs. Like, for me, those could be 3 different operators that could all be like added separately. As a game designer, would you agree with that, or do you think they're doing it about right?
I would say out of the 3 things, like frag grenades, or I'm sorry, breaching grenades, whatever you want to, concussion mines, and ability to pick yourself back up, you need to pick 2. I think 3 is too many, because like they don't necessarily relate to each other. Like, for example, the picking yourself up doesn't really relate to the other 2.
Yeah.
So I think that's kind of the odd man out. If you're going to keep the grenade launcher, then it's like an aggressive like grenade capital, right?
Yeah.
Where he has the 2 different kinds of arrows. And I think that's fine. But that's what I mean when, like, the new designers, like, I think design a little bit differently. We're seeing a lot of operators that kind of have these weird multiple ability things.
Yeah.
So like Caveira was another example, right? Caveira has like a couple different abilities that are kind of weirdly mixed. The interrogate and the silent step, those kind of support each other a little bit more. So I would say, I mean, I think that the being able to pick yourself up on Zofia is interesting, but I think it would have been better on maybe a different operator. I think on an operator that it makes more sense for. So, I mean, at some point I'll have to ask them, why they, when I get a chance to talk to them in person, like why they decided to add that, to get some more insight on that. But it seems like that's not something you add just the heck of it, unless they just were like, that was something that they had in their pipeline and they wanted to add to some operator and decided that Zofia's like grenades weren't enough.
Yeah.
I just want to add to that, but I still like, I'd almost in a way that I'd actually almost rather it be the picking yourself up in a concussion mine only, or a concussion grenade only, no frag grenades, because you're kind of duplicating too much of like Ash and Hibana and Sledge and Buck.
Yeah. Like
you have so much soft wall destruction on all these other attackers that I feel like that was actually the odd man out, really, because it's not going to replace Ash. And I think there's plenty of other people that could open the walls for you. Not to mention you have a giant LMG that could easily tear down the wall by itself. So it's a situation where I felt like that was the extraneous part. The picking yourself up, my understanding is you only get 1 HP when you get back up, right? So that's a case where that's an interesting idea, and I don't think that's terribly out of place. But again, yeah, 3 is probably too many.
Yeah.
I feel like just the combination of the concussion mines and the other thing. I feel like they're going kind of hog wild with the concussion effect though. Like they introduced it on Echo, and then put it on Ella, and then they're now putting it on Zofia as well. I mean, it makes sense in a way to tie Zofia and Ella together. Mm-hmm. And so again, that's why I feel like that one might be fine to like have, you have the concussion things because it's like the counter to Ella, or not counter, but like a mirrored Ella, and with the ability to pick yourself back up is a way to mirror. And maybe this is what they were thinking, is a way to mirror her ability to use concussion mines while downed.
Yeah. So
like they were thinking they both have down but not out abilities. And so again, I think those things were fine. I say take out the frag grenade.
Yeah.
One, and then I'm comfortable with how it's designed. Would be interesting, but again, it is kind of funny that it's a 2-speed, right, and not a 3-speed Ella.
Yeah.
So I don't know.
So I think like if you had a grenade launcher that could bounce grenades off of walls, that would be super viable. Like think of Oregon when you're in bedroom and you're at the big window outside of bedroom, and they usually like are sitting in bunk with a hole to the like flipped over bed. Like it would be decent if you could have someone that, if they had a grenade launcher that the grenades could bounce, you could shoot it at the door frame, and then the grenade would bounce back into the room. And then
I think you can kind of already do that though with throwing grenade.
Yeah, maybe.
But I mean, you see the really good players. Like I've seen like Eclipse do these great moves where he bounces off back walls to get people to his left or right, things like that. And now they introduced the new like momentum system for grenades, where you can now affect how they're thrown by moving. I think kind of like makes what you're saying like less necessary. I mean, I think it's interesting. Don't get me wrong, but I think it's so many other operators could do something similar.
Yeah.
Right. I don't think it necessarily is like this great new ability.
Okay. The next question is there any changes that you'd like to see with the Pro League players, as in like their behavior or their, I don't know, what they do in downtime or anything like that? Like, for example, you'd like to see them scrim more.
Yeah, I think the scrimming is the thing that I know there's a lot of drama and issues internally with scrims, where you get teams blacklisting each other, or you get teams that don't want to scrim certain teams because they don't want to give away stuff. And like, you end up in this situation where the meta gets kind of weird sometimes because people can't play against each other properly. Yeah. Because they do or don't want to give away strats, or they do or don't want to play against the team. And you get some people that are toxic in scrims and will just like, they'll just play really dumb or do runouts, or like we'll just rage quit when they're losing. And it's a bit unprofessional, unfortunately. And I hope something like the ladder system kind of better suits a sort of like organized scrim system that actually counts for something, that maybe people will treat it with more respect. So for example, like you have like R6TM, right, which is like an organized customs for 10-mans. And that sort of like, it's meant to be somewhat serious. So like there's punishments for just bad behavior. Whereas in scrims, there's no one really administering that. You just kind of like work it out amongst each other. Yeah. And teams like have trouble organizing scrims. And so I don't know. I hope the ladder system's like a better way to deal with that, but it probably won't be, because people don't want to give away too much to like the general public. So it's tricky, like in terms of behavior like that. But I do think there needs to be maybe a little more accountability for toxic behavior behind the scenes. And that goes all the way to like, how people behave in ranked games and casual games outside of it. But I think a lot of that ends up coming down to accountability more than necessarily like trying to tell them what they should do, because they know what toxic is. Like everyone knows what toxic is. Like, but it just comes down to without accountability. And I know there was kind of an example made of Elevate with Laxing the Skies a while back. And I think maybe that curbed some toxic behavior in public games, but probably only to a certain extent.
Yeah, and how long does that last for as well? Like, that was a while ago now. Yeah.
Without good examples. I mean, there's enough people that will post stuff on Reddit, though, like, hey, this guy was being toxic, like that. Hopefully that helps as well. Yeah.
There's the last few questions are all from Twitter. They're all a bit random. The first one is from BK, and he asks, why is the Earth flat?
Why is the Earth flat?
Yeah.
It was easier to 3D model. Takes up, you don't have to use a bunch of triangles necessarily in the same way to try and create a sphere.
Save space.
So it's just easier. Yeah, no, it was a compression algorithm for the universe.
Yeah, that makes sense. Aljo Killer asks, how does it feel to have better hair than in Terre?
I'm just glad it's not red, because I know that's difficult, He looks the closest to me of all the casters, and so he's like the ginger equivalent, I guess. But I do have to hairspray this hair. Like I literally only get haircuts at this point, like the last like year and a half, just before anytime I'm going to be on camera, like before like LAN finals and things like that, or before the season. So like this last season, I literally got like a haircut like the day before I flew to Poland.
Yeah, I
So
think
like,
I remember.
I can't groom myself outside of that.
On Twitter, like I can't remember when it was. I think it was before Invitationals where you got a haircut just before, and it was like before it was super scruffy, and then the next like afterwards, like proper nice.
Yeah, try. But you get so sweaty and like stuff gets crazy. You have headphones on like that. It definitely messes up your hair.
Yeah,
but yeah, I do try and put some effort into looking somewhat presentable. I'm just glad I look a lot younger than I am, and I got to try and keep it up that way. I wish I could shave off this to really show you like how young I look, but I don't have a good enough chin. So that's the main reason why I have facial hair, is just to cover up my lack of good chin.
That fits into the next question, which is why does his face look like a baby with no beard? And that's from Hyde.
Yeah, I definitely do. Like, I don't know if a lot of people have seen me with a completely shaved face. Like, I keep joking about doing it before LAN finals because people won't recognize me. They'll be like, "Who's this guy on the left? Like, who's this new grill?" it's a situation where it's like, yeah, I think I look better like this, but yeah, I don't know.
I think you should get just for one LAN. I think you should do it, or for the
It's tempting.
There's the All-Star matches, the Invitationals, isn't there? If you play that and you lose, then you should do it. That's what it should be.
The bet, yeah.
Yeah.
I played one show match once, and that was with the when the Brazil stuff was coming out, the Skull Rain, and it was with like it was playing with influencers, and we all had to use Xbox Elite controllers.
Right.
And that was at a PC finals as well, I believe. Or no, that was the Xbox finals. Because I think that was in Burbank, yeah. And I did so terrible. Like all of us were like PC players, and we were just like, "Oh God, please carry me," because like I'm playing on a controller. So yeah, that was hard. But yeah, it would be funny. Yeah, if I get in a show match, like just throw that out there as a bet.
You should definitely do that.
I usually do it like once a year. I'll do it, and then like, my fiance's like, "Who the hell are you?" Like I feel like the stranger living in my house. He looks so different. And I got that nice cartoon of me. I'd have to like Photoshop it like to not have facial hair on the cartoon too.
I think it'll be worth it if you do it for the bet.
Yeah.
CC asked, "What's your favorite dad joke?"
Oh man, I don't know. Like, I don't think I make terrible dad jokes. I just make a lot of really bad puns.
Yeah.
So for me, I guess any bad pun, especially off team names.
Yeah.
Like just really dumb team names. Like making fun of using those in a dumb sentence. I don't know. I make some pretty cringeworthy puns.
I'm sure.
So maybe that's why I get paired with Bloodbath.
I remember you doing some for Excellence.
Yeah.
I think you did some for Vertical Gaming too, but I can't remember what they were.
I'm sure like about the vertical gameplay or something.
Yeah,
probably.
something like that.
Just terrible. Especially players' names too. Bad player names.
Yeah.
I don't know. I'm trying to insert some levity into the matches, but I have to try and behave myself as well.
Yeah, I think you need to work a sexy cake joke in there somewhere, because that is a great name.
Oh yeah, I casted all of season 1 of Brazil in English, and not a lot of people know that because obviously it wasn't really well advertised. But like they last minute weren't able to do have candidates cast the Brazil, so I just took and did it on my own stream. And yeah, there was definitely lots of jokes about those guys. Because like I wasn't controlling anything. All I had was a straight audio feed. Yeah. And unlike do it with production and Katowice, I don't have break screens I have break screens, but I don't have like all these stat screens to show and other stuff to cover up all the extra talking. So yeah, there was definitely a lot of jokes about Brazilian player names and stuff.
And the final one is, do you approve of pineapple on pizza? And that's asked by Shishka.
Like sweet and savory like goes well together to an extent, but I feel like the warm pineapple tastes a little weird. Mm-hmm. So I'm not the biggest fan. Like I'll eat it, but what I like to do if you want some sweet on pizza, this is a little tip: get like a hella meaty pizza and put marshmallows on it, just little bits of marshmallows, right? So I did this over at like those. I don't know if you guys have those over where you're at. These pizza chains that use 800-degree ovens, and they'll make you a pizza hella quick, like a small personal pizza.
Right.
And you like kind of build it yourself, like you tell them what you want on it.
Yeah.
And they make it right there. So I tried that there one time as a joke, and the way the meat juices melt, with the bits of marshmallow. It tastes really good. And everyone who's doubted me and tried it is has learned their lesson. And so like I do that now, and it's like it's a really good sweet savory. But I feel like the meat juice is an important part of it because you get stuff like salami, pepperoni that kind of gets that melts the juice in the like the grease layer. I know it sounds gross to people who don't like this, but oh well. It's still definitely try that.
I'll try it, but I'm unconvinced.
Good replacement for pineapple.
Well, yeah, I'm unconvinced though, but I will try it and I'll let you know.
All right.
I'll tweet out
the results. Yeah, please tag me in that one.
Is there anything you want to plug before we finish, like your Twitter or Twitch? I don't know if you're going to be streaming at all.
So my Twitter's at MZO. Twitch is just MZO. I tried to change it to the shorter one once they introduced the new name changing for affiliates, but sadly they're still taken. Also, I'd like to plug the AMA I'm doing for the Pro League Reddit on the 30th. So that'll be if you didn't get your questions answered here, save them up for that. But yeah, like a big shout out to you as well. Like always been a big fan of yours, and I look forward to year 3 expanding Chanka News Network to be a worldwide global dominant force of news in Siege.
Now Vivendi's not trying to take over Ubisoft, it's my turn. I'll be there.
Yeah, they're coming for you, buddy. But thanks for doing this. Bummer last time we tried to do this didn't work out.
It did not work.
So I'm glad we were able to make it up. Please, fingers crossed this recording makes it out there into the world and that we see it.
Yeah, it's still recording now, so I'm hoping when I click that stop recording button, it's going to be safe and sound. That's the prayer.
Yeah, shout out to everyone. Look forward to hopefully seeing everyone at Invitationals. I don't have any confirmation on that just yet, but I'm hopeful. And I don't know if there'll be any kind of casting of the ladder matches, but I will see if I can maybe sneak in some casting of those on my personal channel to kind of help promote the matches that are going on, as the qualifiers. So I can't promise anything on that, but follow me on Twitch. Like I said, MZO. So that way, if I go to do that, like usually I pretty much only stream when I'm casting for the most part. So if you see me come online, I'm probably casting something interesting. So check that out. I also have, I think, a tournament might be coming up that might be on December 2nd. So I will tweet out, closer to that probably. But keep an eye on that. That is for a T3H tournament. I did one for them a while ago, and they're cool guys. Support them. But yeah, there's lots of small stuff. If if you're casting or running tournaments and stuff like that, and you need a caster, hit me up. Depending on the timing, I may be able to do it. Like, can't make any promises, but.
Are you planning on doing any more for CCS?
So I don't know. Like, it depends. I mean, I haven't done any for CCS in a long time. There's this guy that sounded like me, Oz, that did one. That a lot of people thought was me, but
yeah, I remember that.
I don't know. I just it depends. Like, there's a variety of factors at play, unfortunately, in terms of my time and stuff like that I'm trying to work out. But I do. If you see behind me, there's a lot of boxes and stuff. I just moved into a new place. Before I was in a very tiny place with my desk in the living room. Now I'm in a proper room that is dedicated pretty much just to VR and casting. Somehow I will put those two together. Don't worry. So I've got like a proper mic, like a little scissor thing. Like, this is my casting room. I'm gonna like my camera set up nice and maybe a green screen through it on. Try and make this a little nicer setup for casting in the future. And so hopefully I should be able to do more casting depending on what I'm able to do job wise and money wise in the holiday season coming up. But do look forward to that, and I look forward to sharing Siege with everyone in the community. You guys are all awesome, even when you're toxic. At least you're entertaining to me. So keep up the good work on Chanka News Network, and then keep watching everyone, even if you forget who I am when I come online.
Great, and thank you for watching. Make sure to like and subscribe. As Emzo said, there's going to be an AMA with him on the Pro League subreddit. So if you want like any expansion or any more questions answered, then definitely ask on there. But yeah, thank you for joining us. I'll let you know whether the recording worked or not. Cheers.
Sweet. Cheers, man.